All right, so this is our first lesson when we come to our industrialization and reform unit. What we're going to look at in here is just looking at the population shifts, how they shifted from America, how they shifted from the country to the city environments. What I want you to focus on is make sure you're getting the main idea for each one of these slides. I'm going to underline and star some information. Also going to add some stuff. So if you don't pay attention to the audio of the video, you will lose some information. So let's make sure we have everything. Now, the topic for today is population shifts, and the objective that we're going to be using for today is to identify the reasons that the population shifted from an agrarian or rural-based society to a manufacturing urban-based society. So why do we go from being primarily country, everybody living in the country, to everybody moving to the cities? And that's what we're going to look at today. Now, our main question, our essential question for today is, what forced the American population to shift, and are we still seeing that shift today? So at the end of the day, I need you to be able to answer this question in about a paragraph form. Okay, so let's talk about early America. From the founding of America, we were an agrarian society. We went through and had a farming society. It was necessary. We had to have farms that could produce food, and that would provide for the entire population. All right? And without the food, people would have starved to death. Even as America continued to move west, we were still seeing the same ideas. It took decades for manufacturing to catch up. So it was very important to make sure that we understood that farming was going to be the way that everybody survived. This is what a farm would have looked like during this time. You could tell that everything's very basic, but we're going to have everything lined up for everybody to survive. Well, then in the late 1790s, we're going to have a guy named Samuel Slater. Go ahead and underline his information. And he's going to, quote unquote, take blueprints from the factories in England and start his own factory here in America. What we mean when he says he took, quote unquote, the blueprints, literally he stole everything that he had. And this allowed him to go through and to continue to start factories in America. He was from England originally, but he saw the potential in America. The first thing he started was a textile factory, which made clothes, and then many more factories began to find success as well. This right here is what one of his old factories looked at. This is called the Old Slater Mill. Basically, this was one where they go through and they would cut a lot of lumber and make it into wood that you can use. We also saw some textile factory work here as well. That just means that they take the cotton and convert it to thread, and the thread would be turned into clothes, and then the clothes would be turned around and sold to people. And this became especially important during the embargo of 1807 and the War of 1812. This is the only way Americans were able to gain manufactured goods. I would write down this entire point because that is super important. Now, this one, we're going to see the population shifts. Now, we're going to start with the map, and you can tell, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more, is when you look at the map, you're going to see the green is going to be area where there's very few people. The gray has just a little bit more people. Orange is going to be about 10 to 18 to 90 people per square mile, and then the red is going to be anywhere where there's 90 or more people per square mile. And you could tell that they're focused in right here, and that is where the major cities are for manufacturing in the Northeast. Think today your Bostons, your New Yorks, Philadelphia's, Pittsburgh, places like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see why that happened. Let me zoom back out. The cost of land is very, very expensive in the South, okay? So when we talk about the South, we're talking about the land between Virginia and Texas and all along the Gulf Coast. And if you worked the land, you didn't get paid a whole lot either. So people began to move to larger cities looking for work. They would begin working in factories, especially as they were continuing to expand and make more and become more powerful. Basically, the people that owned the factories would be very, very powerful. They would be able to hire people, fire people at will. So it was always very troubling. So this caused the cities to grow exponentially faster. Excuse me. Sorry, I don't know what that was. But what we're going to see is we're going to see that the factories are going to shoot the population into the stratosphere. Everybody's going to start growing, and the cities just had a struggle to catch up. This moved the cities, the move to the cities, by the creation of the railroad systems also. The railroads are really going to aid in this. This is where you're going to see a lot of trains right in this area here. It's also going to help move products and factories at a faster speed too. So we're going to see the railroads become a huge important part of all this. Now, what we're going to look at finally are some positives and negatives when it comes to factories and it comes to the urbanization. Now, I want you to copy everything for each one of these 2 slides. Okay, so copy it all. Now, first off, we're going to look at the positives. The positives were they're going to introduce this whole idea of interchangeable parts. That meant that they could have replacements for anything. So, like the spokes on your bike, wheels, the pieces for tools, everything could be fixed. And they could be manufactured a lot cheaper because I can make 1,000 of one thing and it'd be a lot easier to do it. So we're going to see specialization on the assembly line. This is what the assembly line looked like. Think back to the video that we watched yesterday. We're going to have an increased demand for American products. We're going to see that being able to produce all these things, we're going to have a lot of people excited about buying American. And then jobs for people moving to the cities, especially our immigrants. We're going to have lots of folks from European and Asia. The Irish are going to come because of the potato famine. And so the potato famine is going to be where all the potatoes in Ireland basically went rotten. And when that happened, a lot of people starved to death. So they're going to start leaving to come to America. And that's how we're going to get a huge groups of Irish throughout the Northeast. Problems are the factories are going to create a lot of pollution. They're going to have very unsafe work environments. People your age would be working in heavy factories, and they would go through and they would talk about kids your age would lose their lives, lose their arms, fingers, legs, whatever it was, in that factory. And so it was very, very dangerous, and it's going to divide social classes. You're going to see straight up the rich, the poor, the people in between. Finally, and this is the same thing, we're going to copy it all. We're going to see what the positives and negatives of urbanization. We're going to see that it helps bring innovation to the United States. The more people inside of a city, to make yourself stand out, you're going to try to work a lot harder. And it's going to give more power to the industrialized North. They're going to be able to make a lot of policies, and it's going to anger the people in the South. The negative side is going to make for higher population densities. The Northeast is going to have a tremendously larger amount of people than it does in the rest of the United States. Basically today, the Northeast, Florida, California, and Texas are the most populated areas in the United States. Everything in the middle is still pretty empty. And it's going to create a lot more health issues due to ways the city's sewage systems work. This right here, I'm going to zoom in on the picture, is a tenement. You can see that we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people living in this house, and this house is probably no bigger than the closet in Mr. Sledge's room. There's going to be a whole lot of people living in there. They're not going to have any plumbing. People are going to bathe very few times. They're going to throw instead of flushing the toilet, they're going to throw it out on the streets, stuff like that. And it's going to manifest to a lot of diseases. So we want to make sure that we understand that, and we'll talk more about that another day. So make sure you have all the main ideas, answer all your questions, and then hit your summary statements.